everyone. So here we are nearing the midterm, and we are going to review the reading process and the skills we have learned so far, including context clues, topic and main idea, and supporting details. So let's get started with the review. Let's start with the reading process. You've been using it all semester every time you had a reading assignment, and I do hope you are using it in your other courses as well. So the step one is before reading, and anytime you're asked to read something, you should have the goal of activating your prior knowledge and setting purpose for reading. Step two is the during reading, where you want to read actively by making connections and monitoring your comprehension. And then step three, after reading, is organizing what you have read and to use it to think critically. So let's go over step one again. Each week you've been looking at an article and determining what the article's about by reading the titles and subtitles, looking at the images, special print, and even watching a video if just to build more prior knowledge. And after that, you ask yourself, what do you think you know about the topic? This is very important, as you know, because it's kind of like looking at a puzzle box lid. If you don't have the lid, it's really hard to put the puzzle together. So looking at the title, subtitle, images, special print, maybe even watching a video allows you to see the box top lid before you read. But then you also want to set your own purposes for reading and ask yourself, what more would you like to find out about the topic? So you devise some questions for yourself, and you've been documenting this through the pre-reading process of writing statements of what you know about the topic and writing questions of what you want to learn. During reading phase, you're going to try to utilize what you've learned throughout the semester in order to understand your reading. So during your first read, you might want to just grapple with what is actually being said and make sure you understand the words that are being used. And that's where context clues come in. Making sure you know the words that are being used in the passage. You might want to look up a word, but if there's not enough context clues, but if there is enough context clues, you use those context clues very cognitively to understand what the author is trying to say. Another important skill is to being able to identify the author's main idea of a particular paragraph. The topic goes with that main idea, of course, and then being able to look at the supporting details the author is using to help you understand the main idea. We'll talk more about major and minor details in a little bit. But another thing you want to look for is just look to see how it's organized. Like, is the main idea first, and then you have supporting details, or is the author starting with the supporting details and leading up to the main idea? Making inferences is something we talked about in terms of a main idea. The author may or may not state the main idea in one sentence. It might be two sentences that combine to kind of state the main point of that paragraph, or sometimes the author doesn't say it at all, and you really have to just infer what the main idea is. And that's called the implied main idea. So after reading, we've been getting together as readers, and we've been talking about our reading. We've been determining the important concepts, summarizing the reading. If you were tested on it, you'd have to remember certain things, but we've also been evaluating the information, deciding how it applies to our life and comparing it with other information we've learned on the topic. That's something you can do on your own too, but it's very helpful to do that with others who are reading the same materials. So let's go ahead and talk about context clues. So I hope you remember from your textbook, there are four main kinds of context clues: definition clues, synonym clues, example clues, and contrast clues. There are some others too, but these are the most dominant. Definition clues are very easy to identify because the author actually defines the word for you. So if the author is using the word microchips and you don't know what it is, they might say, they implanted microchips or small electronic devices in terms of what is a microchip. And same with synonym. They might use a synonym to mean the same as microchips. Contrast clues, I'm going to skip examples for a minute because I have an example. Contrast to clues is when they say the opposite of something. So we know we have robots, but the opposite of robots is human beings. We are not robots. So sometimes they might say, unlike human beings, robots do this or that, or and vice versa. What about example clues? Well, I took one right from your reading, and you see in the dark print in the reading passage of the word surveillance. I want to just model to you how an example clue is showing up in the reading itself. In that particular part of the passage, it says, these include surveillance of employee emails, wearable technology that can track employee movements, and radio tags on factory products that allow bosses to monitor how fast workers on an assembly line are operating. So they have the word surveillance, and then they give these examples so we can kind of guess what surveillance means. Basically, it means tracking, right, or keeping track, whether it's monitoring, keeping track. This is all surveillance, watching over their employees in some way, shape, or form. So that's what you want to do when you read, is look for those context clues for those words that might be more elusive to you. You're not quite sure what it means. See if you can find information in the text to help you understand the meaning of that word. You can always stop reading and go to a dictionary or to a website and look it up, but you definitely want to make sure you understand most of the words in the passage. So the other thing that we talked about so far was the importance of identifying the main ideas. We talked about that an article will have an overall main idea, and that you usually figure out right away when you do your pre-reading. You looked at the title and the subtitles and the special print. You maybe looked at a video, and you pretty much know what the author wants to talk about. So, for example, you read the article, How Sweet It Isn't, and you knew it was going to be about sugar in beverages because that's what you got from your pre-reading. But now you want to find out more about that particular overall main idea, how sugar, the unhealthy aspects of sugar. So each paragraph is going to have its own topic and main idea. And so just a quick review of that as well. One of the best ways to figure out the topic is to just ask what word, name, or phrases keep repeating themselves. And as you can see in the dark print on the right, I have highlighted the words that repeat themselves in this particular paragraph from the article, How Sweet It Isn't. So we have sugar being repeated over and over again, obesity, or words like obesity, such as overweight or obese. And then we have type 2 diabetes being repeated, and so on. So we have a pretty good idea that this is going to be about sugar related to those specific health conditions. So then we want to find out by reading it, what particular idea does the author want to get across? So as I read, I want to begin to look for that idea right from the start. So I'm going to begin reading. It says, consuming too much sugar over long periods of time leads to serious health problems that can be fatal. Sounds to me like the author hit the nail on the head. But then I'm trying to see why we have obesity and type 2 diabetes listed as so much. So how does that tie in and be part of the main idea? So when I read the next sentence, it says the three most serious and common are obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. And even before I read the rest of that, I realize that the rest of it is going to be about the obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. So I can now pretty much determine the main point that yes, sugar is a problem because it compounds the diseases of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. So the first two sentences combined pretty much state that. The other skill that you learned recently was supporting details. So supporting details support the main idea. And once you've determined the main idea, all the rest of the sentences are supporting details. The thing that's important to determine is which details are the major details and they support the paragraph directly, and which ones are more minor details that may be important to learn depending on what it is the minor details are saying, but yet they can't hinge by themselves. They are hinged to the major details. So I'm going to talk through this paragraph on stressed out so we can see how major and minor details work together to support the main idea. The main idea is in black, the major details are in blue, and the minor details are in yellow. So it starts off, people who are stressed out tend to do other things that make their body less healthy and more vulnerable to the effects of stress. And as you know, many times the author does state the main idea first, and since this is a very broad sentence, I'm thinking it is the main idea. So the second sentence mentions about eating more fatty comfort foods leads to obesity and diabetes. So many eat more fatty foods. So when you're stressed, you eat more fatty foods. When you're stressed, you smoke or drink more. When you're stressed, you often feel like you're too busy to exercise. So I see that those are three different ideas, but they all support the first sentence of doing things that make your body less healthy. So each of those are major details to support that main idea. But then I noticed the next sentence where it says Dr. Therese Seaman says that is very, very specific about exercise. It's talking about being physically active. So that is a minor detail, just telling more about the major detail that came just before it. After that, I notice in the next sentence, the author uses the word another. That's sort of a clue that maybe this is another major detail, because I notice it says another element of modern life which contribute to higher stress is the tendency to isolate oneself. So that's completely different from the other three ideas of eating bad, of drinking or smoking, of not exercising. This is a mental thing. So this would be another major detail. And then the rest of the paragraph talks about what happens when you isolate yourself and how that leads to stress. So interestingly enough, this paragraph had basically four major points and then details to support them. I noticed that the details, minor details to support them, but notice that the first two major details, the author chose not to use any minor details to support it. And the author really didn't need to. We know, most of us know what fatty comfort foods are, so they didn't list any. And we know that smoking and drinking too much is dangerous, so the author didn't really have to expound on that. But the author expounded on the exercise and then on the tendency to be isolated, which they really expounded on to help us understand why that can cause us to be stressed. Now, when you're reading, if you can just really target that main idea and then look for those sentences that give the direct support to the main idea, you really do understand the author at that point. Even if you don't remember the minor details, I think we could walk away from this passage knowing that stress is causing havoc in our bodies, and it causes us to eat fatty foods, to drink or smoke, to not get exercise, and the tendency to isolate ourselves. And there you have it. You have what the author is trying to tell you. So we're going to stop there. I gave you a review of everything you need to know for the midterm. And I think that if you do the practice assignment that comes next, you'll feel comfortable and ready to go. Thank you for your time.